Hello, it's been so long since I've made a video again. Um, Essentially, what was going on was that my phone had like full capacity, like 64 gigabytes worth of stuff on it. And I was like, what is even on it? And I was trying to like take everything off it. And then because my laptop had broken, I couldn't take stuff off it. And then I figured out that you can transfer it to a Google Drive. So all my videos and stuff that I had on it that were like a gigabyte each, I'd moved onto the Google Drive. But then I still had like no space. And I was like, why can't I like record any videos or anything? Like, why is there no space? And I figured out it was because of all my Audible books. Like, they were taking up like 60 gigabytes worth of space. So I've removed them all from my phone, although I've removed the ones that I've reviewed. I think I put these in the wrong ears. These are in my ears because my neighbour is ridiculously noisy, so this will hopefully not distract me as much. I bet I just mess with the sound as well because it's recording on here. Anyway, so yeah, I have free space now. I can make videos now. So but then I can't actually edit them, so we'll figure something out. I might just upload it as it is and just not edit it at all. The purpose of this video, let's get on to the purpose of the video, is that I've just been reading this book, The Mind is Flat, by Nick Chater, and it's so good. It's one of those books that's like a complete paradigm shift. So what you think of as like yourself and your like inner depths and your personality, he's basically arguing that they don't exist. Like, you just make things up on the spot as you're going through life, which would explain why you kind of behave in ways that you don't really understand sometimes, because you are improvising in the moment and that you don't actually have a static personality, that it very much depends on what's happening to you at that time. And you might not even have like beliefs and values that are consistent because they're in the moment. And I actually have had experiences where that has happened to me, where I've thought something about myself that I think is true, but then in the moment I haven't really behaved like that. So then that doesn't kind of mean that that is who I am. Anyway, it was interesting because I was practicing for one of these videos, just like working through my mind what I was going to say and something different. And I started talking about like inner depths and personality, and I was like, oh, but these things probably don't even exist, so I can't even talk like this. So yeah, it's definitely worth reading. But what I was going to do is I was going to read you the last chapter to give you a kind of insight into the book, because it's summing up like everything that I read in the book, I assume, because it's the epilogue. Do you know, I just realised I haven't got my glasses, so I'm not going to be able to see. I might pause it and then re-record it with my glasses on. But yeah, I'm going to read you the last chapter because that's what I'm up to. So it's called Reinventing Ourselves. So I'll go and get my glasses. The glasses are on. Okay. We've all been victims of a hoax perpetrated on us by our own brains. Our brains are spectacular engines of improvisation that can, in the moment, generate a colour, an object, a memory, a belief, or a preference, spin a story, or reel off a justification. And it is such a compelling storyteller that we are fooled into thinking that it is not inventing our thoughts in the moment at all, but fishing them from some deep inner sea of preformed colours, objects, memories, beliefs, or preferences, of which our conscious thoughts are merely the shimmering surface. But our mental depths are a confabulation, a fiction created in the moment by our own brain. There are no preformed beliefs, desires, preferences, attitudes, even memories hidden in the deep recesses of our mind. Indeed, the mind has no deep recesses in which anything can hide. The mind is flat. The surface is all there is. Our brains are then relentless and compelling improvisers, creating the mind moment by moment. But as with any improvisation in dance, music, or storytelling, each fresh thought is not created out of nothing. Each fresh improvisation is built from the fragments of past improvisations. So each of us is a unique history, together with a wonderfully creative machine for redeploying that history to create new perceptions, thoughts, emotions, and stories. The layering of that history makes some patterns of thought natural for us, others awkward or uncomfortable. But while drawing on our past, we are nonetheless continually reinventing ourselves, and by directing that reinvention, we can shape who we are and who we will become. So we are not driven by hidden, inexorable forces from a dark subterranean mental world. Instead, our thoughts are actions, and actions are transformations of past thoughts and actions, and we often have considerable latitude and a certain judicial discretion regarding which precedents we consider, which transformations we allow. It's hard reading out and like knowing that people are listening to me. I'm kind of making mistakes. I don't make mistakes when I'm reading to myself. As today's thought or action is tomorrow's precedent, we are quite literally reshaping and reinventing ourselves thought by thought. This is not a familiar story. It is not an intuitive story. It is a story that shakes our faith in everything we think we know about how our minds work, including what we see and feel, the nature of memory, decision making, and personality. It is a story in which we cannot find ourselves because there are no selves to find. So, yes, it is a story of a hoax, a conspiracy, an illusion, or even notice that there is a veil we might wish to lift. But it is also a story of how more than a century of scientific investigation of the mind has, step by step, allowed the hoax to be uncovered. Once the spell of the inner world's true selves, mental depths, and unconscious mental forces is broken, we can see ourselves in a clearer light. We are astonishingly inventive, ad hoc reasoners, creative metaphor machines, continually welding together scattered scraps of information into momentary coherent wholes. We are very different from the image we create for ourselves and much more remarkable. This is all very well, you may say, but surely we need beliefs and motives to explain why our thoughts and behaviour make sense rather than being a completely incoherent jumble. Surely there are crucial inner facts about us, large and small, that set the course of our actions, the things we value, the ideals we believe in, the passions that move us. If the mind is flat, despite the stories we tell about ourselves and each other, beliefs and motives cannot in reality be driving our behaviour, because there are no inner beliefs and motives are a projection rather than a reality. On the other hand, layers of precedents, the successive adaptation and transformation of previous thoughts and actions to create new thoughts and actions, can provide a very different and more convincing explanation for the orderly and, on occasions, the disorderly nature of thought. Moreover, moving from individual minds to society as a whole, our culture can be viewed as a shared canon of precedents, things we do, want, say, or think which create order in society as well as within each individual. By laying down new precedents, we incrementally and collectively create our culture, but our new precedents are based on old shared precedents. Same precedents a lot, isn't it? So that our culture also creates us. Considered in isolation, ourselves turn out to be partial, fragmentary, and alarmingly fragile. We are only the most lightly sketched of literary creations, yet collectively we can construct lives, organisations, and societies which can be remarkably stable and coherent. The idea of continuous reinvention is particularly vertigo-inducing when we realise that once the hoax is uncovered, the very idea of an objective and external yardstick against which to judge our behaviour as individuals and as a society is not just impractical but also wholly unsustainable. There is, after all, no solid foundation upon which we can build. New thoughts, values and actions can only be justified or criticised from within a tradition of past precedents. Of course, which precedents should be applied and which should be dominant? I don't know if that's the right word. May be mattered of dispute, just as they are in law. This does not mean that anything goes, but it does mean that the construction of our lives and our society is an inherently open-ended creative process, and that the standards by which we judge our decisions and actions are part of the same creative process. In short, life is a game in which we play, invent the rules, and keep the score ourselves. This perspective might appear to be a recipe for a relativist nightmare, that any point of view is equally valid or equally dubious, but the reverse is true. If there are no ultimate foundations on which the good life or the good society is based, then the challenge in our own lives and societies is to explore and resolve conflicts in thought, whether within ourselves or between individuals. While holding on to old precedents can be seen as a conservative political impulse, the aim of bringing distinct traditions into contact and ultimately perhaps into alignment is the impulse behind the liberal political tradition. For example, the principle of freedom of speech is designed to allow public debate to link together momentary beliefs across time, individuals and communities, and such debate may be codified by mathematical and scientific methods. Free markets, money, trade, and the modern economic system connect together our preferences by means of the exchange of goods, services, and money. Democratic politics and the rule of law can resolve potential clashes between our actions, where a decision at one moment may encroach on a decision at some future moment by the same person or another. In a liberal society, then, we do not merely dream our own individual dream or write our own particular story. Rather, we continually strive to link our stories together into a single cohesive whole. Yet, even in a liberal society in which preferences, beliefs and actions can be connected, precedent-based thinking appears inherently conservative. How then are perceptual reorganisations, sudden insights, religious conversions and conceptual and political revolutions possible? One answer is that memory is fragile, so that we can often end up starting again from scratch and coming up with a different answer. We forget the old story and create a new one. But there is another possibility that changing part of the story can lead to a cascade of far-reaching consequences. For all its focus on the authority of the past, we should remember that successions of precedents can, step by step, lead to remarkable metamorphoses. Legal and political systems can transform themselves over the generations, though at each step guided by the interpretation and reinterpretation of what went before. A mathematician may use past precedents in methods of reasoning in order to show that an entire theory is inconsistent, and may even conclude that a great swathe of apparent precedents, previous results from that theory, must be abandoned. Individuals may gradually begin or cease to trust a cult leader or religious or political text. They may take up or abandon a cause, a project, a relationship, or in many other ways transform their lives. So what counts as a precedent can shift itself and shift again. We hope to stumble towards better and better stories, but we can only create new stories by starting with the stories we have. We should, moreover, never assume that achieving greater coherence necessarily implies cultural or intellectual progress, and we must be ever vigilant against allowing ourselves or our societies to ossify into coherent but crushing systems of precedent. But we should also remember that we are not hemmed in by occult psychic forces within us. Any prisons of thought are our own invention and can be dismantled just as they have been constructed. If the mind is flat, if we imagine our minds, our lives and our culture, we have the power to imagine an inspiring future and make it real. Well, that was a bit disappointing. I thought that epilogue was going to be like a whole summary of everything that went on in the book, which would make this a worthwhile reading, but it wasn't. It was a bit, that wasn't really what was kind of discussed in the book. It didn't really talk about anything to do with politics, or I understand what he's saying. He's basically suggesting that we invent ourselves as we're going. We're kind of improvisers, and we kind of are just in the moment responding how we think is best based on our past experience and these precedents that he keeps talking about. The book's a lot better than that chapter. But there you are. You can just listen to that.